Good evening. This is Pastor Clifton Haynes of City Hill Church of God in Christ. We're delighted that you're looking in on us live tonight. COVID 19 and so many things are going on around the world have really changed the way we do church, and we've had to reschedule things and be new and innovative. This year, our planning committee came together and had an idea to do master classes, and of course, the world was turned upside down in March when we shut down for COVID 19. But I refuse to let the enemy win, and tonight is our first master class. And tonight we're talking about something that impacts all of us. It is a silent killer that we don't like to talk about. It is an elephant in the room, especially in the community in which we live. That the faith community tends to say, give it to Jesus and Jesus will fix it. And we know that is true. The Bible says that whose mind is stayed on him, he will keep him in perfect peace. But what about those people whose mind can't stay on him? Well, we tend to forget about those people and ignore their needs and their concerns and the things that they're able to cope with. Tonight, we're talking about mental health. And we have a very special guest with us tonight, Miss Ashley Moore. She's a graduate of Mississippi State University with a degree in psychology. She is one of our own, and I thank God for her joining Camelia Hickman tonight. Is going to do the interview. And so I would actually share this with as many people as you can. We need to get the word out that mental health is something that we should be concerned about. And tonight they're going to talk about some of the anxieties of the things that have been going on. I get calls all the time, Pastor, I'm having a panic attack. Pastor, I have anxiety. It seems like the world is caving in on me. And COVID-19 has only helped to increase that and intensify that. And so we want to learn some ways that we could cope with those things. We understand that prayer and giving it to Christ absolutely works. But there's also some other things that we need to be aware of as well, that we have to learn how to intertwine our faith with the facts. And the fact is that there's so many people in our congregation that are suffering with mental health. And so we're here to bring awareness to those things and pray for those people that their faith will increase and will be helped through all the necessary means and avenues to get help. And that's going to take all of us encouraging and lifting up in prayer, walking people, with people, talking with people, encouraging people, and good godly counsel. And so that's what tonight's masterclass is all about. It is good godly counsel. Let's join the interview with Sister Camelia Hickman and the life coach, Miss Ashley Moore.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. You look pretty.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
So first, I just want to say that I'm so excited to have the opportunity to share this platform with you.
I appreciate you guys for definitely having me. This is a really big deal.
Well, we appreciate you sacrificing your time. I know that, giving your time is a huge sacrifice, so we appreciate it.
No problem.
So with that being said, let's jump right in it. We know there's a lot of stuff that's been going on in our world. So basically, one of my first questions to you is your thoughts and concerns with, on the effects of the events over the last 4 months, such as COVID-19 and then some of the newly surfacing social justice issues. How do you feel about that?
I honestly think that, initially being faced with COVID-19, it evoked a lot of fear in everyone. This is something that we've never experienced before. This is something that was very brand new, and it's frightening to know that there's an illness that attacks your respiratory system that's going to, attack your lungs, and you're not going to be able to breathe. And so I think for society as a whole, we had to adjust to what looks like a new norm, where we're practicing social distancing and we can't visit our family or our friends, right? And so I think, one, we had to definitely adapt to the changes that has happened around us, and just really take take it seriously, but it has not been easy for people, especially people who are introverts or extroverts who like to be out and about and be around family and friends. And so, it was very different, and a lot of people found it challenging. And so, when you got to a point where you have adapted to this new norm, now we have these social injustices that has always been an issue, but now, like, the entire world has really wrapped their arms around, I would say, the African American community, where now is being brought to light, and we have all of these different people who are standing up. But it's been very difficult to see. It's been very disheartening, and I think there are a lot of conversations that has to be had that hasn't happened yet.
Right. Yeah, my daughter and I, we talked about it briefly today, and she was saying how it was so huge to see so many, young people on the move.
Hmm.
Yeah. So,
It's
and that's
definitely been great to see. I will be very honest. I was very hypervigilant initially because, with your younger generation and you are on social media, you see I am not my ancestors, right? But we very much are our ancestors. And so we're standing up and we're still fighting a good fight. But it has definitely been great to see how our younger generations have been protesting. And I saw recently on a social media page where some high school students organized a very successful protest where they had thousands of people to show up. And so this has been absolutely amazing to watch. And I hope that, now that um, George Floyd has now been laid to rest, my hope is that we don't stop and that we keep pushing.
I totally agree.
Mhm.
All right. Well, next question is, when someone should become concerned, when should we become concerned over a prolonged series of, emotions? I know we don't tell people how long they should grieve or be angry or sad, sad or even discouraged. What's your take on that? When should, we be overly concerned?
I think anyone should be concerned when your emotions have affected your daily livelihood, right? And so things that you would normally do or used to doing, once you have reached a point where you can't pull yourself out of bed, when you can't stop crying, when your physical health has started to decline, and so you have headaches and you're fatigued all the time, I think that is, one of the biggest things where we have to realize or recognize what our body is telling us and not ignore that. And so I feel like once we get to a point where we're no longer ignoring how we're feeling, when if you're normally energetic and you don't have that anymore and you're constantly fatigued, don't want to get out the bed, that's a really big sign that now I need to rally a support system around me, and I probably need to seek some help.
Right.
And I think, the difference between knowing what sadness and what could possibly lead to a mental illness is just knowing that, sadness, it comes and goes. It doesn't necessarily stay there. And it's typically triggered by an event. And so maybe a loss of a loved one or disappointment or a difficult situation that, you have experienced in your life. And so I think it's very, one has to really know how to distinguish between maybe someone possibly becoming depressed and what sadness is. And so for depression specifically, it doesn't necessarily go away. It stays for a long period of time, and typically it lasts more than 2 weeks, right? And so again, depression is a mental illness, and it affects your mood and how you view yourself and the world around you and how you perceive certain things. And again, once it gets to a point where it's affecting your livelihood or your daily activities, then I think that that's a big, you know, it's a big key to know that now is the time that I need to seek support. I need to seek help.
Okay. Are there certain mental illnesses more prevalent across different demographics, such as Black or white, male or female, or young or old?
I definitely think it just depends on the person and the situation, right? And so I think um, it's going to be very difficult to answer, like, if there's one mental health illness over another across demographics, because it's situational. And
Okay.
so what I will tell you is that mental health is probably affecting the African American community more than any other demographic.
Right.
And I'll say, and mostly in our African American men,
But they don't talk about it a lot.
they don't talk about it. Our African American men, and if you think about it, they're taught to be strong, and we don't show emotions because if you show emotions, then you're weak, right? And so, broken boys grow up to be broken men.
Absolutely.
And because of that, they develop unhealthy relationships with like significant others, and the other people that they may have contact with, coworkers, family members. And so I think it's important that we instill in our children, especially our young boys, that it's okay to express how you feel and we are accepting of that without judgment, right? And so, again, our African American men, they don't talk about it. And so they tend to lash out in other ways or seek other defense mechanisms. I won't call them coping, but other
Okay.
defense mechanisms where they put up barriers and have these walls where they don't let anyone in.
Would you consider that as like some of the signs?
Say it again.
Would you consider that as some of the signs of them going through that?
Absolutely. I think, our men experience trauma just like anybody else.
Right.
And so when you don't deal with your trauma, it follows you. It doesn't go away. And it manifests itself in so many different ways. And so you have men who are quick to get angry.
Yes.
Or quick to shut down. And so those are some signs that there is something happening and we don't understand why.
So how do we address it? Like if we notice some of these signs, in our men or just in any of our loved ones, how do we address that to people that we love?
For the people that we love, I think one of the biggest things is that we have to create a safe space where they feel comfortable enough to talk about how they're feeling. And I don't feel like as women, we're automatically fixers. We're solution oriented all the time, and we want to fix everybody, right? And so I think one of the biggest things to remember is that within our men, we don't want to come across pushy or nagging because we want to know why. What we do want to do, though, is create a safe environment where, hey, I may have to model what this looks like. And although it's foreign for me, I need you to open up to me. And so I need to model like, hey, I had a really hard day today. Or even using sentence stems like, I feel because, and open up conversations like that. And it's effective statements and it's not easy. I have been working in this field for over 10 years, and it's still not easy for me to use those sentence stems, but I do try to practice them, right?
Right.
And so I do remember my husband doesn't really talk a whole lot. And so it's very difficult for me to know what's really happening with him other than through his actions and how he's, reacting to certain situations. And so I had to get to a point for me where I will model like, I feel because, and eventually he would start letting me in on some things that could have been bothering him. But I think, one of the biggest things is that we have to model what we want to see from our family members and the people that we love.
Okay, right. I've never really heard it put like, they say you should model, but sometimes it's so hard to model. It's so hard to do that. So, what's a mental health issue that you think that we avoid most, that's avoided the most?
I think there are several. Depression is one of them. I would say depression is probably in the forefront. Bipolar disorder, and for some people who may not know, that bipolar disorder are mood swings where people experience a lot of highs and a lot of lows, and there's no necessarily gray area. There's no in between. And so I think bipolar is one of those overlooked mental health disorders that people don't really know about or know how to recognize it. Anxiety disorder. That was something that I had to recognize for myself.
Right.
Working in such a stressful environment. And so I think too, just being able to know, like if you work in a environment where that's very demanding.
Yes.
Being able to recognize that maybe you're shaking when you have to have a task done, or you start feeling flutters in your heart that may, move down to your tummy. And so just being able to really recognize that that's anxiety and do some things, be more proactive in addressing what those things are to lessen the likelihood. But definitely anxiety, bipolar depression, OCD,
Right.
PTSD, and even schizophrenia.
Yeah.
I would say those would probably be the most mental health issues that we avoid talking about.
Well, how do you think we would bring awareness to it? I know you were saying, I guess you said I asked you a question and then I have something to say behind it, but with the
No.
anxiety, um, I think to a degree, I mean, we all have anxiety that
Mhm.
you don't really, for the longest, I didn't really recognize it in myself, but even when it comes to the tightness in your chest or
Mhm.
it's there. And
Mhm.
so I guess for other people, and I'm aware of it,
Right.
and I deal with it. Sometimes you have to slow down, you have to calm down, you can get some fresh air. You just have to refocus. But so I know how to, bring awareness to it for me, but for others, how would, we educate them on how to do that?
I think there are a few ways that we can educate. One of them is through psychoeducation. And just really knowing what different diagnoses are and some of the symptoms that are associated with those diagnoses. And so, once we know better, we do better. And so psychoeducation is definitely one of those things where we need to teach about the different symptoms and the different disorders and how to support our loved ones, or even how to seek help for ourselves.
Right.
One of the other things I would suggest is probably looking into some support groups that are in the area and
Okay.
joining some of those support groups.
What's your opinion on the perception of mental health in our Black community, in the church, or even professionally?
Um, Specifically within the Black community, we have been taught what goes on in this house stays in this house. And so, although I don't necessarily disagree, I do think there are things that we must address within our household because we tend to sweep things under the rug when we learn of certain situations, right? Or we downplay it a lot and it's not as severe as one may make it seem. And so I think that's one of the biggest issues in our Black community because, again, not only broken boys grow up to be broken men, so does our girls.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important, one, that we create, again, a very safe, supportive environment for our children to grow up in so that they can thrive, but encouraging our kids to express what's happening, what's going on. And again, taking yourselves out of it and taking the judgment out of it, right? And so I think that's probably one of the biggest pieces within our African American community. I have had to, since I've been in this field, not only have I had to learn about it, but I've also had to learn how to adopt some of these skills that I teach some of these kids along the way. And so, like, I didn't grow up where I could talk to my mother about certain things that would be happening to me
Right.
without fear of judgment or being too sensitive, And so for a lot of those situations, I kept it to myself up until adulthood. And again, once you hold things in, it manifests itself in so many different ways. And so I started acting out in ways that were not healthy.
Right.
And so I definitely think, within our African American community, we have to do better with allowing our children to express themselves and being very honest and true to ourselves.
Right.
And, addressing some of the things that we have experienced and feeling okay to, talk about it, be free enough to talk about it. And that's the thing. We don't allow ourselves to feel. We compartmentalize. We put it in a box and we put it up, and it doesn't go away. It just keeps stacking. And so, that's the biggest issue I feel like in the African American community. For me, we go to church. We put on our nice clothes and we go to church and we say our amens and hallelujahs. But I think we as a community have experienced different levels of trauma for so many years, from slavery all the way up, right? And
Right.
so I feel like, again, we're compartmentalizing and we go to church and we act like there's nothing happening. And so there are resources at church that can help you. There are people at church that can help you, but we don't seek those resources. We go to church and we read the Bible, and I swear by the Bible, I do. But I think there are faith without work is dead.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I
Mhm.
think that, churches, we are supposed to go to churches. It's supposed to be our hospital, but so many times um, you don't seek help there or release to people because you fear judgment,
Mhm.
and it's not, it's the way it is. It shouldn't be like that because you should be free
Mhm.
and no judgment, and you should be able to go get help.
And here's another thing: when you go to church and you receive the word, because I mean, again, the word is that's your healing, right? And
Yes.
so when you go to church and you seek the word, how many of us truly take that word and apply it to our lives?
Well, I know that's what we should
That's
be
going to
doing.
be the key. You have to
Right.
apply it to your life, right? And so in certain situations, it's going to force us to look in the mirror
Right.
and to, examine ourselves. And we don't do that enough.
We don't want to
We
do
don't
that.
hold ourselves accountable.
Yes. So I mean that is good because if you get everything that you get from, because we are given the word,
Mm-hmm.
and if we apply it in every aspect of our daily life, that's the answer. But it's hard.
Mm-hmm. It is. It is hard, but you know what? I'm a firm believer that if all you have to do is take one step and just allow yourself to feel and be free in that. And
Yes.
so once you are able to do that, then you can start action planning. What does my next step look like? And who can be that support system for me to hold me accountable, but also help me with step 2, 3, 4, and 5?
Right.
And maybe that's different people for different situations. I'm a firm believer that the people I allow in my inner circle, they all serve a purpose. And so I don't have one person that's going to be there for me through everything. I know exactly who I can go to and for what.
Right. What about like right now? How do we maintain good mental health during the pandemic and social unrest? Like, what do you do to balance that?
Um, you know what? There are many things you can do for good mental health and to decompress. I would say one, getting plenty of sleep, allowing yourself to get the rest that you need, eating well balanced diets, learning different ways to manage stress. I would also say that meditating,
Okay.
getting in a room by yourself, maybe playing some music or writing in a journal, just allowing yourself to meditate. Find a hobby or an activity, something that you really enjoy doing. And, create a routine in that, and so that you can have some consistency. Connecting with people. And so that's part of rallying that support around you. But again, also knowing when to ask for help.
Right. So, I mean, so that leads me to where we're going now. Like, if I am suffering emotionally, where do I start to get the relief or the help?
I would say one, and I think, we've kind of alluded to this earlier on in the conversation, but I would say one, identifying a support system and
Okay.
talking to those people who would be your support system about what you're experiencing and what they can do for you in that moment to kind of help you over that hump. And if you don't feel like that's getting better, look at your community resources. Obviously, there's resources at the church, but outside of the church, check out your counseling services.
Okay.
And if your company, the person that you work for, offers employee assistance, they also offer 6 to 8 free counseling sessions. And
Okay.
and so that's a major resource for people to, seek. And so I would recommend definitely that, because they don't know who you are, you don't know who they are.
Right.
All of the sessions are confidential. They do not give this information to your employer, so you don't have to necessarily worry about that. But it does give you an opportunity to, one, experience counseling for yourself and
Right.
really see if this is something that you wish to continue. And outside of that 6 to 8, those people can give you a list of providers that you can
Okay.
further mental health assistance from in the event that you need it, that will be within your insurance network.
Okay. Well, that was good. I mean, I've appreciated hearing your views on these topics. And I know it's helped me. So I'm encouraged to know that it'll help somebody else. So now what I want to do is I want to get to this book.
Oh my goodness.
Let's talk about pain and healing. I bought it. Well, of course, I did. Well, I read on my ebook. So the only copy was available was the paperback. I said, well, I got to get it. So I got it last week. I read it 3 days ago, actually on my lunch break. It was a refreshing. It was a refreshing read. There were so many stories about just relationships and being able to get past those. So I think it's good for self-help and just being able to actually even relate to some of the stories. It was a good read for me.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. So tell me about it, about the book.
Well, I was at home one night and my husband was working out of town, and I had been talking about writing a book for quite some time. And so, in this field, we encourage people a lot of times to do journaling. And so for me that night, I just decided to get out a lot of different experiences that I've had and maybe change the characters a little bit, manipulated those a little bit, but just really get out some of my personal experiences or some encounters that I've had. And so that's kind of how I started with the book. And I sent the manuscript in to a few publishers, and they picked it up, and we've been rocking and rolling
That's
with
amazing.
it. Yes, it's been very rewarding. The biggest thing has been to just get the story out, right? And
Right.
so I mentioned early on that I didn't necessarily grow up in an environment where I felt comfortable enough to speak on some of the situations that I experienced.
Right.
I've had a very unhealthy relationship with like my sister or estranged siblings on my dad's side. And so I'll be lying if I say that those things didn't affect me in my current relationships with family, friends, or even with my husband. And so those were some things that I just needed to get out and address. And so there are some domestic situations in there, and those are some situations that I feel like, now looking back, it was necessary for me to go through, right? And so, I say it's necessary because I was one of those that didn't necessarily know my self-worth. I never saw myself as pretty. People used to say so, and I'm like, And so, it's when you know who you are, and when you have developed that self-worth, and you know that I don't deserve this, I deserve so much more, and I'm not going to allow anybody to treat me any less.
Then it's an awakening.
Man,
It's
it
an
has
awakening.
a huge awakening.
Like I said, so many of the stories were so relatable. I mean, women go through so much stuff, some stuff that's so ugly that you can't tell, but once you, like you said, once you realize that, I'm not built for this, that God didn't design me for this, that you're so much better than that. You'll know that kind when you see it coming.
Absolutely. That's the key. You know what I mean? Because again, think about the environments that some of our children have grown up in,
Right.
and thinking like specifically our foster care students. Like since I've been in public education, man, the number of students that are in foster care is just so sad. And, again, situations manifest this way through our actions, right?
Right.
And so for these kids who are acting out in unhealthy ways or have unhealthy relationships, it stemmed from their lack of, relationships at home. And so you encounter other people and you think, oh, well, they treat me like this because they love me. This is how mom and dad has also shown their, like mom and dad hit me, but they're supposed to love me. And so this must be okay. You
Yeah,
know,
so it's a norm for them. That's what
it's
they,
a norm. And so we have to be mindful of the messages that we send to our children, because as they grow up and they encounter people, they're going to look for people who are very familiar
Mhm.
and, to their experiences.
Yeah, either they're going to look for it because they think it's normal, or they're going to hate it so much that they'll be the total opposite.
Absolutely.
So, like, what kind of feedback have you received from your book, and how do you think that it has affected lives?
I've gotten a lot of great feedback with this being my first project, which is why I was so short. Um, but a lot of feedback that I've gotten, again, has been a lot of females who have went through similar experiences,
Right,
whether it was a situation between, them and their mother, or them and their relationships with other men. And so, I've had people to email me just wanting to know, like, how did you escape? And how can I seek help? How can I escape from that? And so, like, how do I tell someone that this has been happening to me without feeling guilt or
right.
shame? And so I've gotten a lot of great feedback, from a lot of women to say, you know what, I feel like now it's time for me to speak up. And so I just need help on knowing what that looks like and what it sounds like. And, are there some support groups that I can go to? And so I've identified a lot of domestic violence groups for women, battered women to go to.
Okay, that's
Mhm.
rewarding.
It is.
So, what is the biggest takeaway that I should get from the book, or other readers should get from it?
I think the biggest takeaway is knowing that how you start does not have to be how you end. And
Absolutely,
so, absolutely. So even though you may have had a rocky start from childhood, you get to write your own story.
you do.
No one else has the power to do that but you. And so, knowing that you have the power to change that, what do you choose to do today?
That's good
And
stuff.
what is your ending going to be?
That's good. So, tell me, where can they go get it? Where can people go get this book?
My book is on Amazon, and it's also in Barnes and Noble.
Okay, all
It's
right. I didn't know it was
online.
Barnes and
It's
Noble.
online at Barnes and Nobles and
Okay.
online at Amazon. Mhm.
How can people contact you?
People can contact me. I have a social media page. I can be found at Ashley the Author Moore, or Rebuilding Character, which will be the same page as my book. And so with
Okay.
Rebuilding Character, there's always some self-help tips on there about anger management, drugs and alcohol, and things of that nature. And so I can always be reached on um, Facebook, and I can also be reached via email. And my email is ashley32more@gmail.com.
Perfect. All right. This has been good. It's been really good. I've enjoyed talking to you. I just appreciate you sharing your gift with us.
Thank
Like
you.
I said, I know that the conversation that we've had today, it has helped me, and I know that it's good information and resource for other people, and I know it'll encourage them. So I appreciate you. I look forward to our next session, and until then, just be blessed, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Thank you so much. I look forward to it.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
You too.